Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Not Purple Ponderings, people. We are going to pick
It
up
is
from
for
where
now.
we
Just for this one,
just
the
for this
last one.
one. Okay, all right. Just for this one, in continuation of our last episode where we said we're going to use AI to come up with all aspects of how to create a podcast about AI. We had left it um, with the results of our own analysis of using AI to come up with the right name. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host and friend Nick Lamparelli here, and who's going to walk us through what happened after the episode ended. Here you go, Nick.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to find out, Pankaj, because you and I have been discussing this, is what our theory was at the very beginning, which is it's going to be very hard for AI to kind of do the entire workload here. What we got from ChatGPT and Bard were lots of different options. They did not necessarily overlap. We think we preferred the way ChatGPT for this particular task was kind of thinking through this process. And we ended up choosing two that we thought would be the most interesting. And we shared it with the insurance nerds Slack community and got them to vote on it. So the choices were the podcast name of Bites and Policies, because it's going to be AI and probably some insurance bent to it, or Risk and Robot. And by a overwhelming majority, 91%, chose Risk and Robots. So this will be the last episode of Purple Ponderings. And going forward from here, and maybe we'll edit this so it'll be Risk and Robots if we can actually get it done in time. Going forward, the name of the podcast will be Risk and Robots. But I think a big lesson in what AI. I think a big lesson in what we've learned here is the I think the that the AI does not have the capability of really extending this from A to Z. That there must be human intervention along the way. Human creativity, I think, can be especially useful for this. But our new podcast is called Risk and Robots.
That's awesome. All right, people, that is the new name that you all have chosen. So you will see Risk and Robots as the name of the podcast. Now, the podcast name alone was not enough. What we'll tell you is that we had a few more decisions to make as it related to a logo, some colors, some brand colors. And so what we'll do now is take you in a little bit of a walkthrough of what we came up with in those areas and tell you where we are going to land in today's episode. So let's go to figuring out what the new logo looks like. All right. So what happened was as we started to look at what are the options for us to come up with logos, I just simply Googled, hey, what are some AI tools for logo creation? And I'm sure if you do this on your own, you'll see a bunch of different options come up, right? And I started going through some of them, like Beautiful.ai, which I'm sure a lot of you use for presentations. It's interesting. It's a paid ad right at the beginning of a logo creation AI tool. But one that I landed on a little bit, and I was, you know, uh, intrigued by it was this one called brandcrowd.com. So if you click that, here is what the prompt was that I gave here. Now, by the way, this is free. So maybe, I don't know when they'll figure out their model, which is probably eyeballs, but um, the prompt that I gave was, here's a description of what we're doing, what's the name, what are some keywords, and lo and behold, it has come up with not one or two, but 8,721 options for a logo. Can you imagine if you were a human design person and somebody gives you this brief that come up with a logo, would you come up with like 8,000 plus variations?
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I can, right? And
Pankaj, I'm curious if you in the prompt, can you filter it, ask it to limit it to its top 10 or 20 choices?
limit to top 20 choices. All right, let's see. All right, there you go. We'll do it
You and
real
I have
time,
already
Nick.
you and I have already had our sights on one of them.
Yes,
Um,
yes. No, but it
oh,
did
it
not
didn't.
listen at that prompt.
It
Yeah.
did not. Okay, interesting. Um, and it actually lowered ours down. It was actually higher at one point, but the one in the middle of the screen, so row 3, column 2, that one really stood out to me. I thought that was like, wow, what would you have to pay to
Yeah.
have someone, even on Fiverr, what would you have to pay? It probably would be hundreds of dollars in order to land on something like that. And
Yeah.
days. You have probably days worth of work.
Yeah. And this was in seconds. And by the way, on the left, I really like this tool because you can come up with different styles of the logo. For example, if you're doing this for your corporate world and you choose the corporate logo, well, guess what? It's very, very formal looking options that come up. Um, so that's another advantage of this tool. I love the options for the color. So I have, you can see pre-selected grayscale, purple, and orange because I just love those colors. But we could have chosen different colors to further filter it down. So I just think that this is amazing what options it can generate. But in the interest of time, we'll keep going. We did really like this face with the Risk and Robo um, title. So we decided to go ahead with that one. At which point it asked us to create an account, which makes sense. We have to create the account. But guess what? It automatically came up with variations of the same theme. And you see the number of options it has come up with. So now we can actually choose the specific color and the hue and the nuance of which exact one do we really like, right? So I think Nick,
I like I like orange and black. I like row 2, column 3.
row 2, column 3. All right, so orange and black are my colors too. So let's just go with that. And at this point, I think we have our logo in orange and black. It is allowing us to modify, come up with our own slogan, which, for the time being, we'll skip unless, Nick, we can use ChatGPT to come up with another slogan
Yeah,
here, but I think that's gonna take a
we absolutely could.
little bit of time. So this is, I actually did ask ChatGPT while we we're waiting for this, but the prompts that it came up with were so unimaginatively. It came up with something like exploring AI and navigating risk, which sounded like a corporate exercise to me. Didn't like those names. I just didn't have the time
Yeah,
to kind of come up with a creative, catchy slogan. But we will do that. Why don't we come up with that by the next episode?
but
Uh,
but but I think the lesson here is like, again, going back to the A to Z. There has to be human handholding in this process. There's just way too many decisions to make. And while a lot of these tools can kind of leap you forward, for example, the logo, like as we said, it'd be crazy, right? It's crazy to think how easy that was to find something that satisfying and being able to get access to it for free in just minutes that would take potentially hundreds of dollars in days to get done. Even if you were doing it on Fiverr, never mind like a professional designer or a logo company to be able to do that. It's so impressive, but even in the selection of it, there's still so many, there are micro steps, so many little decisions that you have to make around, like you said, color and hue and tone. And then when you got to get the slogan right, that this is not as straightforward as people think, that AI is just going to come in, step in, and kind of take jobs. It's just more complicated than that. But a human that can engage with this can be so much more productive, so much more creative, so much more effective.
Absolutely, absolutely. So on this topic, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with the catchy slogan. We're going to download that logo. You're gonna see that in a future episode of Risk and Robos as we go in this season. We will also do some research on the colors. There are many AI tools for brand palettes as well. We will come up with what we came up with. The process is going to be very similar. Actually, I did explore already AI tools from brand color, and just like that, so many options are there. So we'll do all of that to have our inputs pieces that we need to get the branding going for Risk and Robos. But on that note, I'm going to pause here, Nick, and let's cover the other topic that we wanted to cover today, which is something that you and I have been talking about, and I think has a very practical application right at the get-go with any role that any of our listeners are playing. And certainly you and I have been using this tool, and this is to do with our note-taking tool. So let's go and do a deeper dive on that.
Sure. So what we're going to go over, as Pankaj said, that's going to have some, I think, practical use, is right away we noticed that the Zoom that we use, and I think a lot of people use, probably either Zoom or Google Chat or Teams, like one of those three is the predominant video conferencing tool that everybody uses. There are already AI tools that are associated with it. And right away we notice, like, wow, we have a lot of options. How do we choose which one is better than the other? So part of what we'd like to accomplish in this particular not just this episode but in future episodes is for Pankaj and I to run actual experiments. It's going to be an AI podcast built by AI, so the note-taking tool, the transcription should be done by AI. So what's available? We set up a few different accounts to kind of get started. The one that you're looking at now is Otter, which is Otter.ai, which is a very popular transcription service. I had been using Otter.ai for years for the different podcasts that I have had. I have recommended it to others. And traditionally, the mechanism to use Otter is you do your recording and then you upload your file, and then there's a transcription. But now with all of these tools, you can actually link Otter to Zoom. And so when your meeting starts, the transcription service will knock on the door and actually ask to come in. But it's so much more interesting than that. I had a meeting yesterday, Pankaj, that was canceled. And I canceled it a few minutes before the meeting got started. And I sent a note apologizing for canceling the meeting. I got an email back that said, oh, that's not a problem. Let's reschedule. Oh, by the way, your Otter.ai wants to come into this meeting. And this is where I think productivity could be really enhanced. Is Otter.ai can be your note-taking tool for meetings that you cannot attend, right? How often have you asked someone to record a meeting and then you just didn't have time to go listen to that? What if the AI tool can go into that meeting, provide a transcript and a summary of the particular meeting? That's what you're seeing here, right? So this is a recording and a transcript of the meeting. So it went in, it didn't know who I was. Okay, no offense. That's one of the things about these AI tools, right? Like the transcription is not going to be perfect. Like there's additional editing, which here's the edit button right here. You'd have to go in if you wanted to make this really clean. The AI itself is still not ready for prime time. A human would have to go in and clean this up. That's what I was doing for a lot of my podcasts. The most time-consuming step that I had was going in and editing the transcripts so that the words that you would see in the video were clean and it didn't look like it was all garbled up at different moments. So I would actually go in and it would take me hours sometimes to, I wouldn't say retranscribe, but just go through every word, every sentence and make sure that the punctuation was in the right spot. The next sentence started with a capital letter. But that's with Otter, you can train Otter to remember like proper nouns. You can train it to remember certain phrases. So there is the ability to go into Otter and actually train it. What is new is the summary. So it goes in, it's trying to summarize. It's we're gonna make a teaser video. It's trying to summarize everything that's happening in this particular conversation. And again, doesn't quite nail it. It's good, not perfect. So again, there's like a human element that I think is missing from this. You can't just completely rely on these tools. They're not ready for prime time. So Pankaj, one of the tools is Otter. The other one is Fathom. Um, okay, so now it's working in the background. Hold on. Otter went in and started talking. Okay, Otter is running the video in the background. Um, Fathom is also a note-taking tool. The right now the entire business model for Fathom is free. They are they obviously can't stay that way. This is to get market share. And they're not hiding that. They are saying they are going to go to some tiered service in the future. What I found interesting with Fathom is that it actually records the video. It actually records the screen. So you can go into various elements of the video that we recorded, Pankaj, and it's there. Transcript as well. I think it did a better job of creating the transcript. I think we'd have to put them side by side and put it to a bigger test. Um, Similar to Otter, you can copy the transcript, you can remove it, you can create a .srt file if you wanted to use it in a particular way. And it does have a summary. So when I clicked on summary, I did have to generate it. It did take a minute or two for it to read the transcript and create the summary. But my impression of Fathom so far was like the layout and the setup, it was much more appealing to my eyeballs. It fit the way that kind of I work. But I think another really interesting part, and Pankaj, let me know if you can see this when I drop it on the screen. Can you see that?
No, I just see your scene right now.
Okay. So
I will say one thing though, while you're on this page, Nick, as you were kind of doing a compare and contrast. And again, just for context to our listeners, there's a third note-taking tool called read.ai, which I will cover. But as Nick, you're sharing your views and observations. I couldn't help but notice that you're right about how much more user-friendly Fathom is compared to Otter. But when it comes to summary, when I think about the word summary, I'm not expecting either some bullet points or some condensed version of the entire transcript. Whereas I don't see that here. Like in summary, this is essentially a screen sharing summary of what was happening at different points in time. So if you're looking for, what was the nuts and what was the takeaway? What are the two takeaways in that entire meeting? It's going to take me a little bit more time, uh, and you'll
yeah,
understand why I say that when I cover read.ai. So yeah, keep going. Sorry.
yeah. I'm and honestly, I don't know which one's better because I'm not sure if you can create an executive summary of we were recording for like an hour, right? Like, can you properly create a summary around that? Otter did, it seemed like, did neatly collapse the area. So they got to sort of like a bullet point, and if you wanted to see more, you could you could expand that particular section and kind of look into it. Fathom does not look like it has that piece of it, but again, I'm not sure if the summary is actually going to work for something that's long. Can you properly capture it? I think it's going to take more time and practice to be able to do that. But what I was trying to show you, Pankaj, and maybe we can get a thumbnail or a different video that we can piece in here. What Fathom does have, Fathom's recording this conversation right now in the background. And it has 4 different functions, which I think are very useful, especially for folks like us that are doing a podcast or recording something. One is it has a highlight function. So you click on highlight and it actually will make like a bookmark at that moment that you click highlight and begins like a, I don't know if it's a separate recording. I don't know if it just makes makes a note there or a bookmark, but you can click highlight and you can actually enter in some information about it, and you can tell it, okay, from where I clicked highlight, you go to some point in the future, you can end the highlight, and now you have a nice encapsulation of something that you've grabbed. And for anyone that's recorded, anyone that's done podcast work or whatever, one of the things that I think becomes very valuable in the editing process is to know like what needs to be edited, right? And in the past, what I've done is I've had a notebook next to me, and I would take a note. So if someone dropped a swear, or I've had podcasts where my guest froze, right? So I asked the question, and my guest froze, and they asked me to delete that part out. I made a little note, and I went in and I deleted that part out, because they asked me to do that. But that's a time-consuming process. With Fathom, you have the opportunity. The 4 functions are highlight, positive reaction, needs review, and feedback. And you can actually customize that color-wise. They're set at different colors. You can actually go in. So Pankaj, if I were to, let's say, drop an F-bomb right now, I could quickly hit highlight, and it would, I think you can program it to actually go back in time as well from a bookmark standpoint. So you now have neatly caught it, and you have a little note that says, don't forget to edit this piece out. You can make a little note to yourself. So you nicely captured within the functionality of the tool. I don't see anything like that in Otter, and also Otter does not share the video as well. And I think that's a useful function as well. It'll be interesting to see what gets shared here. It looks, there's a share function. There's probably a link to this video. So I don't know what kind of editing we can do for it, but I think from what I've seen, Fathom might have some more functionality. I don't know how well we can kind of go in and transcript, edit these transcripts. Let's see. Oop, it's a hover over. Yeah, you can edit the transcript, you can change the speaker. So there's some functionality in here that I think is very valuable to folks like us, not necessarily for note taking, but for folks that have to do some post-processing and editing. So I'll stop with the Fathom and the Otter. Do you want to share read.ai?
Yes. All right. So now what we'll do is we'll go to read.ai, which is the third tool. So I think, as you can see, this is a summary of the read.ai, which sends a nice email, and you can get a link. And as soon as you hit the link, you get to this page. I've been using this for some time too, and Nick, I've used both the free versions and the paid versions. This is the free version. What I've liked about read.ai is that between all the note-taking tools, this is the one which actually gives me the answer to the question in this meeting where I did not take any meetings. What was the key takeaways? What was the summary of it? What were the topics that were discussed? what are the action items, right? Which is why you want to make notes for the most part, especially if it's in a professional context. And then what were some key questions asked? So instantly, to me, if I have to now send a follow-up note to the participants in the meeting, it's much more easier to do here uh, than any other tool that I've seen so far, because I can now cut paste and say, these were the topics that we discussed. Here were the action items that we came up with. Here are the timelines, etc. So I can at least take the output of this and create a email summary, and maybe be ready with the sending that email out in say 5 minutes versus 30 minutes that it might take otherwise. But the other thing that it does, it does do some coaching as well, which is what I love. And this coaching is about the bias that we have in speaking. This is what I really, really love in this day and age. You want to know, are you using some non-inclusive terms? Are you being, hopefully not, but racist without knowing, right? So I feel like this was a very, very important um, feedback to me in how I could improve this meeting again if I had to meet the same person. Can I remove the bias, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, and you get that obviously the output in the paid version, which is I think about 10 or $15 a month. Really important in today's world. Talks about the talking pace, inclusion, and impact. So I think I haven't seen any other tool which was actually a coach, like real-time coach for us, right? That we could immediately take feedback and work on. So I feel now this gives the video recording as well. It does the highlight, does the transcript. So everything that all the other tools are doing as well. But I feel like this is the part which to me is one of the key answers that I'm looking for in a note-taking tool, which is what happened? Was that accurate? And then can I just generate a follow-up email? What I'd love as a feature, and this is a message to any read.ai person in the unlikely event that they see this podcast, is like if they could create a email ready output of everything that we see here, especially in an internal meeting, this would be all okay. But in an external situation, if we are in a client facing role, then it would be nice to have the ability to just focus and pick on the action items, a lot of the times in the summary it might include, for example, in every professional interaction, you start off with something ice breaking, right? Some general topics about sports or some vacation, etc. And you might not want to have that in the output generally, right? So you want to be able to essentially just take the essence of the meeting, which is the action items, the topics, who's going to do what, etc., and be able to pull that out. Again, I'm just like being very nitpicky here. Very happy with what I see. As you can see, they're also giving a score around the sentiment, etc. You can click on where there was more engagement versus less engagement. That comes in the paid version, so you can see what was it that you said that made the conversation much more productive or fruitful suddenly, right? Where the AI tool is saying that was a good part of the meeting, and what was the part where there was maybe low energy, and maybe a lot of these things intuitively, but it's easier to go back and see, okay, was there a set of words that I used that maybe got us into that lowering of the energy or decreasing in the sentiment or engagement metrics. So those are, I think, the kind of the key takeaways. And I think we spent a lot of time on these three tools. So hopefully our listeners are better off on all three. But Nick, any closing words from your side?
I mean, the light bulb went off in my head when we were looking and talking about the coaching stuff. Perhaps, and I think we'll have to keep testing this, perhaps that might be ultimately the best possible function for a lot of roles, like a sales role, for instance, to be able to read those emotions, the charisma, negative engagement, positive engagement, things like that. I know on Fathom as we were talking. As I talk, I'm getting Pankaj, if I talk too much, I get a warning message that tells me it's called monologue. So I'll say monologue, and it's actually counting how many minutes that I'm talking. And as a podcaster, that's incredibly important for me. I always look at that number. And your Read.ai had a number as well where it broke out who was doing the most talking. That's very important to as a indicator later on to figure out, if you're having a sales meeting, who's doing the most talking? And typically in sales, you want your customers to do most of the talking. So you can start to do analytics on success. Did we get the sale? Did we not get the sale? Did we get the commitment to the next step? And tie it to this talk time. And as I'm talking, Fathom just put up a green light that told me that my participation is less than 50% of this conversation. And I've been talking for 1 minute and 36 seconds on this. This is real live coaching and feedback that you can use. I think we're just scratching the surface. Like, I think it's what we have to be careful of is prematurely assigning a role or a value to some of these tools. Like, immediately I was like, oh, the transcription's not as good as I wanted it to be. But then you showed me something else, Pankaj, and I'm like, whoa, that's incredibly valuable that it can detect tone and charisma and things of that nature. If that's accurate, that could be very valuable. I do think that my monologue that's going now on 2 minutes and 22 seconds is incredibly accurate, and it's telling me that I should shut the hell up, right? And we should
Yes.
finish this.
Yeah,
So
let's
that, that's very helpful. And for someone like me, like, see, I can't stop talking. For someone like me, it's important to have that feedback. That's just a warning there. That's like, come on, end this, get this over with. So I'm going to end it right now.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The reality is that this itself is a whole topic by itself. I don't know if you've heard of this company called Gong.io, right? Gong.io has become a unicorn, and they're actually, I think they started off by being very closely tied up with Zoom again. And Gong.io is a tool that a lot of the sales organizations use to provide that real-time coaching for the salespeople. They record a lot of customer conversations and then provide that feedback to management as well as the salespeople for exactly that purpose. But the point is that you're looking for that one tool that can do a lot of things for you. So if Read.ai is giving us that feedback, or Fathom.ai is giving us that feedback now. So it's doing note taking, it's giving us the inputs to create that follow-up email. Again, as a human, if I now know what the tool is doing and how I can use it, I'm better off than just by not having that tool, right? Which is, again, one of our hypotheses. So we'll probably keep that whole sales angle for a future episode, because we do want to have, that is part of our thesis, which we shared in the teaser episode, that we do want to understand the impact of generative AI and the tools, etc., for different enterprise functions. Sales or customer service is certainly one which we'll do a deeper dive on. But again, this was a great episode today, a little bit longer than what we may have liked, but I think it was important for us to cover the two aspects of the name of the podcast, as well as our perspective on note-taking tool. I'm just going to say that once we release this episode, please feel free to give us some feedback. If you'd like us to go more, we can go more. If you'd like us to be more, crisp and concise, which we probably should try and do, Nick. But as you noted in your monologue, that this is so exciting, you can't shut up at all, right? Including me. So we'll with great difficulty, let's come to an agreement. This is the end of the episode, and we'll see you guys soon on a future episode of Risk and Robot. Nick, any final words?
Risk and Robots, that's what it is. So future episodes, we'll work on branding colors, we'll work on the logo, intros. Again, we're going to try to really show our work and hold true to a podcast about AI. built by AI. Until
Awesome.
next
All
time.
right. Take care. Thank you.